All right, today we're working on unsquaring numbers, and not like it says up there, it says square numbers, but we actually are working on unsquaring numbers. All right, sorry about the mistake there. All right, so our objective is to introduce the concept of square roots and the use of the square root key on a calculator. So let's move on. Look at these two problems. All right, let's look at these two problems. Now, you don't have to write any of this down. You could write unsquare numbers and the objective, but you don't have to write this. All I want you to do is sit back and think and absorb the knowledge that's coming out of the computer speakers into your ear. Okay. Look at the first one. Blank times blank equals 4. What are our possible choices to fill in those blanks? Okay, so the first thing we could do is we could do 1. We could do 4, because 1 times 4 is 4. 4 times 1 is 4. And we also could do 2, because we get 2 times 2 is 4. Now, what if we replaced those blanks with a variable? What if we replaced it with n? So n times n equals 4. What could n be? What are our choices for the being that n is the same number? So n obviously would have to be 2. 2 times 2 equals 4. Since it has to be the same number, n would then equal 2. Okay? Let's look at the next one. Something squared equals 81. Okay, so let's rewrite it. Instead of using blank or something, we would use m. So m squared equals 81. Okay. What is m going to be? So it would be m times m equals 81. What choices then do we have to make m true? Well, there's only one choice. M has to equal 9. Okay, so to unsquare a number, you undo the operation that squared a number. So for example, 4 times 4 equals p. So here you are squaring the number 4 to find p. So it's 4 times 4 is the same thing as, oops, get your pen, Mr. Shanto. 4 squared equals p. Okay, it's the same thing. Okay? But when you're unsquaring, you're looking at it this way, where you're looking at n times n equals 16. You're unsquaring the number 16 to find n. So write this part down. Write essentially the definition of unsquaring numbers. Write what the opposite of squaring numbers is, of unsquaring numbers, is squaring numbers. So 4 times 4 equals p. You square the number 4 to find p. And n times n equals 16. You're unsquaring 16 to find n. So it would be n squared equals 16. Okay? So n is going to equal 4. You're going backwards from what you did before. So what number multiplied by itself is equal to 289? So this is where we get complicated, and you can find different strategies to solve the problem. The best way to start thinking about it is go with the numbers that you know, that you're comfortable with. So let's start with something simple. So let's start with 10 squared. Okay, 10 squared is the same thing as 10 times 10. So 10 times 10 equals 100. Okay, so we're well below 289. We're not anywhere near that yet. So it's not going to be 10 squared. Okay. But let's try something else that we know that's simple. Let's try 20 squared. Well, 20 squared is not hard because it's essentially the same thing as 2 squared. We just have a couple of extra zeros. So if 2 squared is 4, then 20 times 20, each 20 has an extra 0 next to the 2. 20 times 20 is 400. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. So we are greater than 289. Okay? So we know that our number, whatever, when we unsquare 289, is going to be between 10 and 20. So let's go ahead and try something different. Let's try 18. Okay, so 18 squared. What does 18 squared equal? Okay, so we can break this into two different parts to make it easier on ourselves, or we can just do a little lattice. So let's go ahead and do our lattice multiplication. Okay. Because we're going to have to do some multiplication. You're not going to be able to do all of this mentally. Okay, so lattice. Let's go ahead and figure out. 8 times 1 is going to be 8. 1 times 1 is going to be 1. 8 times 8 is going to be 64. 1 times 8 is going to be 8. Okay, so let's go ahead and add it up. We got 4. 8 plus 6 plus 8. Well, 8 plus 8 is 16. Okay, guys, I'm sorry for the interruption. And I lost my pen. What did I do with it? All right. 8 plus 8, 16 plus 6 is 22. Let's move the 2 up here. So we get 2 plus 1 is 3. So we get 324. All right, well, we're not there yet, okay? I'm a little bit over 289. So I'm getting closer, right? So the next logical step would be to go down one number. So let's try 17 squared, okay? 17 squared. Come on. Why are we not erasing? That's not what I want. Come on. Okay, let's try it without me moving everything around and trying to erase stuff. The technology wasn't working for me so well. All right, so let's try 17 lattice. Okay. Again, I'm kind of trying to do this all out loud, thinking out loud. It's useful to take notes on this stuff, so go ahead and write down what I'm writing down, but just go with what my thought process is here, okay? So I have 7 times 1, so I get 0, 7. I got 7 times 7, so I have 49. And I apologize for the sloppiness. It's a little hard to get into there. Let me see. Can I zoom in a little bit? Oh, let's do that. Okay, zoom in on that one. 7 times 7 is 49. 1 times, 1 times 1 is 0, 1. 1 times 7 is 0, 7. Add them up. I get... This was a 9, and I know it's a little hard to see. 9. 7 plus 7 is 14, plus 4 is 8. Carry my little 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. All right, so let's zoom back out again. What number was I looking for? 289. Boom. Oop. So 17 squared equals 289. You're kind of hunting and pecking and guessing and checking. But whatever works for you, that would be the way to go, okay? Use kind of a strategy like that. Memorize certain numbers, okay, that you can square and use as benchmarks or kind of like target numbers. I started with 10 squared, I moved to 20 squared, so I could get a range, and I just started narrowing down my field of options. So the other one that I think you should probably memorize and have ready to go is 15 squared equals 225. That's a good benchmark placeholder number to memorize, so as you're unsquaring numbers, you can narrow down your options a bit more, okay? And, all right. So what's my big idea, Mr. Shanto? When you unsquare a number, you're doing the opposite of squaring a number. Write this down. When you're unsquaring a number, you are doing the opposite of squaring a number. Okay? Another way of saying this is the square root. When you unsquare a number, you have found the square root. Key vocabulary. Square root. Okay, so squaring and square root are opposite of each other. So if you need to pause, go ahead and pause so you can get down the notes. So find the square roots of these numbers. Okay, so I already gave you the answer to number 225. We remembered that 10 squared equals 100. We just proved that 17 squared equals 289. And I just said a minute ago that if we're working backwards, we could go to 16 squared, but I already gave you the answer. The answer is 15 squared equals 225. Okay? All right. So let's look at 1600. What if I looked at 1600? I'm going, okay, that's a big number. I don't really want to tackle that, but I don't have a choice. What if you just pretended that those zeros weren't there? Okay, think about it this way. What if that's just 16? If it's 16 squared, what's the square root of 16? Well, the square root of 16 is 4. So 4 squared equals 16. How many extra zeros do I have in there? I have 2 extra zeros. So what if I did 40 squared? Oops. Let me erase. Sorry about that. What if I did 40 squared? That is 4 squared, which means 16, and I have 2 extra zeros. I'm multiplying by 10 and 10. So, because remember, 40 is the same thing as 4 times 10, and I'm doing 4 times 10 times 4 times 10. So it's 4 times 4, which is 16, times 10 is 160, times 10 more is 1,600. 1,600. Okay. All right. So remember, let's move on to the next one. If I do, now I'm looking for something between 40 squared, which is 1,600, and I remembered that I had 17 squared is 289, right? We have that up there. So I got to find something in between that. So I'm looking for something. Oh, and I also had 20 squared equals 400. So let me go to the next one. What would then be 30 squared? Well, 30 squared is the same thing as 3 times 10 times 3 times 10. Or 3 times 3 is 9, times 10 is 90, times 10 again is 900. Okay? So I'm not looking for 30, I'm looking for something less than 30. Okay? So why don't I go for 25? Well, maybe not 25, because I know that if I multiply 5 times 5, I'm going to get a number that has a 5 in the ones place. So let me say that again. If I multiply 5 times 5, like 25 times 25, I have to do one step I have to do is 5 times 5. I'm going to get a number in the ones place that ends in a 5. What possible numbers will I get that end in 9? Okay, 3 times 3 is 9. So one of my options could be 23 times 23. Well, 23 is closer to 20, right? And 729 is closer to 900 than it is to 400. So I don't want a number that is closer to 20. I want a number that's closer to 30. Is there a number closer to 30 that when you multiply it by itself, it has a 9 in the ones place? Well, 7 times 7 is 49, right, Mr. Shanto? Yeah, it is, student. It is 49. Well, what if it's 27 times 27? Well, let's give it a shot. 27 is close to 30, so let's do our little 27 lattice. Okay, let me zoom in a little bit so I have more room. 27. Here's my lattice. Okay. All right. I have 7 times 2 is going to be 14. 2 times 2 is going to be 4. 7 times 7 is going to be 49. 2 times 7 is going to be 14. Okay, let's add them up. We have our 9 here. So good, we're so far so good. 4 plus 4 plus 4 is going to be 12. Carry my 1 up here. 1 plus 1 is 3. 3 plus 4 is 7. So let me zoom out again. Do I have my number? 729. Bammo! So let me write it up here. 27 squared equals 729. So there's a couple of different strategies you can use. I used a different strategy for 1600 by using 4 squared equals 16, and then I added 1 0 per 40 to make it work. The next one is I've tried to find numbers that are closer to, benchmark numbers. 20 squared is 400, 30 squared is 900. Okay? And then I looked at the ones place and figured out what are my options. Looking at the ones place will tell you I can't multiply a 2, I can't multiply a 4, I can't multiply a 6, and I can't multiply a 5 or a 10 to get a 9 in the ones place. The only numbers I can multiply are 3 and 7 to get a number in the ones place. Okay? Different strategies to think of, different strategies to use. It's a matter of building that mental process in your head. Okay, but handy dandy, calculators are around us everywhere. And there is a way to do it on a calculator. First, you have the square root symbol on your calculator. But I want you to know how to use the process of squaring and unsquaring without a calculator, because you won't have a calculator on the test. Now, many of the numbers aren't going to be as complicated as what's on this page, but I want you to know how to do it in multiple ways. So doing it mentally is great, but also do it with a calculator too. So you notice that little symbol right there. That little, no, let me erase that. Let me try again. That little, whoop. Let's zoom in a little bit. Okay. This little guy right there, it's a square root symbol, okay? That most calculators should have that available to you to use. So let's go through it. Have your handy dandy calculator out. If you're on your computer, which you obviously should be, calculators, you do a search somewhere on your computer for calculator. If you're on a Mac, it should be under applications, maybe even under utilities, but it's probably under applications. If you're on a Windows machine, it should be under accessories. In Windows, you go to Programs, Accessories, you should find a calculator in there. You can use that on your computer. All right, so 196, let's find the square root. You should have the square root button. Okay, so I just found the square root of 196, and I got, everything's moving around. I got 14, okay? 1024, find the square root. 32. 725, find the square root. 85. 676, find the square root. 26. 5041, square root. 71. 441, square root. 21. Okay. If I'm going way too fast and you're not keeping up with me, go ahead and pause the video and just get these answers in there and then restart it and check your work. 1,849 square root 43. 10,000 square root 100. 3,136 square root 56. 900 square root is 30. Okay. So don't forget, mental math. Try to find a process for you to do it in your head. Use the square root symbol on your calculator to understand how to find it using a calculator so you can do more complicated numbers. Unsquaring a number is the same thing as square root. Unsquaring a number is the opposite of squaring a number. So those are all the really big ideas that I want you to absorb in this lesson. Okay? Go into Edmodo and do the quiz real quick, and you'll be good to go. Okay, see you guys in class.